So tell a little bit about how your personal journey has sort of translated into wanting to help others. You're talking about an abusive marriage and then suddenly having to rebuild your life. Can you talk about the turning point there?
Absolutely. Everything really came to a head in October of 2023. I was newly in the family court system, going through the process of getting a restraining order and staying with that restraining order. I was a single mom with three kids and lost my job unexpectedly. And as somebody who had spent 25 years building a career all the way to the C-suite and highly successful, I had a lot of shame, a lot of shame. And it was a really pivotal moment because what I realized was two things. One, I wasn't out of options. I just needed to start thinking differently. And two, I wasn't alone. It was just nobody was talking about it with the level of success that I had. And so I really started this mission at that point in my head of somebody else can learn from what I'm about to go through. So let's take the lessons along the way and then start to share those as I have them.
Okay. So you were able to even think that before you had circumvented the problem.
I was because it was this moment where my back was literally up against the wall. And I could have said, I give up. I don't know what to do. But that wasn't really the reality for me. I had three children I had to take care of, and we needed an income. And giving up what wasn't in the cards. So what I really had to say was, what can I do in this moment? What exactly can I do? And in that case, it was phoning a friend who had said maybe she needed some help. And luckily she did. And that created one tiny contract that created one amount of money so I could see some hope and a spark that there was possibilities. I just really needed to think differently.
And so you called that friend and that friend hooked you up with a job?
Yeah, right away. She had her own business and she needed some operation support in her business. And as Kismet or the universe would have it, we had been talking about it 2 weeks before. And I had a job and I couldn't help her. And all of a sudden, I didn't have a job and we could both help each other. And so it was right place at right time. But I had a moment where I sat in my office chair and said, the world has come to an end. I'm a single mom. I have legal bills mounting up. I have no options. I have no job prospects. I have no income. This is rock bottom, literally. What
And
am I
how
gonna do?
how do you make that switch?
Because I had had over 2 decades of field training in the corporate world. I was a young woman who was in financial services and had no mentors. I really had to figure out how to be scrappy and resilient. And I had to find ways to survive a very toxic marriage for over a decade. So I just had to take a moment and say, what's the worst that can happen? Really, what's the worst that can happen? And when I realized that the worst was we all moved in with my parents and I went and worked at Starbucks or a grocery store or drove for Uber or whatever it might be, I realized that I still had options. And if the worst was that I still had options, then there was something that was possible.
And what advice would you give to somebody who has found themselves in that situation to sort of switch their mindset?
One of the most important things is that you have to take a little bit of time to grieve what you lost. Because whatever it is, a relationship, a job, you've had a financial setback, you have lost something that you once had, and it's okay to take as much time as you need to really go through that grieving process. And once you've done that, and you can look back up and realize the next step is for you to say, so what now? What can I do today? Who can I call today? Who can I connect with today? Who can I ask for help? And it's just, you just have to take one action. And as you take one action and then another action, you start to build momentum and start to see that there is a way through.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Let's back up and talk a little bit about trauma. You mentioned the job loss, the loss of the relationship, and the fact that this can really shatter self-worth. What are the first steps to trying to combat that?
it's really tempting to go in on yourself and carry all of the burden alone because you're ashamed. You're ashamed of your financial situation. You're ashamed that you don't have a job anymore. Uh, and the problem is that you can't find the helpers unless you ask for help. And so one of the things that I realized was that when I began to actually let people in, my family didn't know what my home life was like for a very long time. And when I began to let people in and share that I was looking for a job and I was trying to start a business and I was dealing with a lot emotionally, I started to identify where the helpers were. And that combined with getting professional help from a therapist who could really help me walk through and see the reality versus the self drama that I was creating helped me continue to make forward momentum and progress while I was working through the recovery process of everything I had been through.
And so a lot of that is, just okay, keeping the forward momentum. But then there's the other part of life of living with purpose and a passion. How do people find that again?
So, one of the exercises I recommend to everybody when they have had a setback or they're undergoing a pivot is to create two lists. The first list is never again. Never ever will I have this sort of job or this boss or be in this relationship, or just create your never again list, because that's the do not fly list. We're not going to entertain that. That's what we're going to screen all of our opportunities with. And then the next is do it again, do it again, do it again. These are the things that I love. This is the culture I love to work in. These are the sort of people I want to surround myself with. This is when I am most fulfilled and in my best state. And as you get clarity around your non-negotiables, because that's really all that that is, you can very clearly start to look at anything that comes forward and say, which side of the fence does it fall? And if it starts to feel like the never again, then you know it's not the right thing for you.
Really well said. That's really simplifies it because there's so many factors floating around in a lot of people's minds about these things. I think you've given us some incredible advice. Anything else you'd like to let people know?
I would say that the most important thing when you're undergoing any sort of change, wherever it is for you to think a little bit about a basketball player. And when they get stuck and they can't make a play, they've got the basketball, but they can't do what they thought they were going to do, they begin pivoting. And so it means they have one foot in place and they begin to look all around for what the options are. And it could be the first one that you thought, and it could be a million other possibilities. And so for anybody that's in a season of stuck, uncertainty, disappointment, just imagine for a minute if you stood up and you started to look around what else you could see if you just raised your eyesight a little bit to all of the possibilities that are around you.